Every single human who has ever lived had one problem in common. Kings had it. Cavemen had it. The smartest people in history had it. Nobody wrote it down. We know what ancient people ate. We know what they wore. We know their favorite gods, their favorite wars, their favorite arguments about absolutely nothing. We do not know what they wiped with, which means somewhere out there, a caveman invented something amazing and just didn't tell anyone. Rude. So today, we're solving history's most awkward mystery. And I promise you, every single answer is funnier than the last. Let's start with Rome. Because Rome went first and Rome went weird, the Romans had public bathrooms, big stone benches, rows of holes, no walls, no doors, no privacy at all. You just sat next to your neighbor and had a chat. And next to the bench sat a bucket of water with a stick in it, with a sponge on the end of the stick. One sponge, one stick for everybody. You'd grab it, use it, rinse it, put it back for the next guy. Think about that. An entire city sharing one sponge like the world's worst relay race. No trophy at the end, just a bucket. There's even an old joke from Roman times about a guy who did not want to use it so badly, he'd rather do anything else. Anything. That's how you know it was bad. It was bad enough to become a joke 2,000 years ago. And it's still funny now. Some jokes just never expire. Meanwhile, up in the freezing north, the Vikings had a very different idea. The Vikings were surrounded by sheep, so the Vikings used wool. Big, tough warriors, battle axes, boats that crossed actual oceans. Their bathroom solution was a fluffy handful of sheep hair. Sometimes they used moss instead. And here's the twist. Moss is actually really good at fighting germs. The Vikings had no idea. They just grabbed the soft green stuff growing on a rock because it felt nicer than a rock. They accidentally invented medicine by accident while sitting in the woods. That might be the most Viking thing that's ever happened. Conquer a village, discover accidental science, go home for dinner. Meanwhile, nobody was writing this down either. We only know because a few clumps of ancient moss actually survived, buried in the cold for 1,000 years, just waiting for a scientist to go, "Wait, why is this moss so oddly popular?" Ancient Greece, home of philosophy, democracy, and some of the smartest humans who ever lived, used broken pieces of pottery, smashed up bits of old pots and bowls. But broken pottery is sharp, like actually dangerous sharp. So somebody had to sand the edges down first, which means somewhere in ancient Greece, there was a real job. An actual human being whose entire task every single day was make the poop rocks less pointy. Not a philosopher, not a warrior, not someone building the Parthenon. Just a person sitting there filing down broken pottery forever. Nobody in history has ever had a worse job title, and nobody in history has ever gotten less credit for it. There's no statue, no museum plaque, just thousands of smooth little pottery pieces, and total silence about who made them smooth. Ancient Japan went with something even simpler. A flat wooden stick. You used it. You reused it. Archaeologists actually found piles of these sticks buried near ancient bathrooms. Just stacks and stacks of the exact same wooden stick over and over for hundreds of years. Basically the world's least exciting time capsule. We dug up the past and discovered a stick, and another stick, and another stick. Somewhere, an archaeologist spent their entire career digging up sticks and had to explain that at every single family dinner for the rest of their life. Here's the part that flips this whole video upside down. None of these people thought this was weird. Nobody using the Roman sponge thought, wow, this is disgusting. Nobody filing pottery smooth thought, I have the worst job on earth. This was just Tuesday. Normal life, no big deal. It only looks crazy to us because we've got soft, squishy, individually wrapped toilet paper. And that invention is barely 150 years old, out of 300,000 years of humans existing, which means for 299,850 of those years, humans used leaves, grass, smooth stones, corn cobs once farming showed up, snow if you really had a bad day. Toilet paper isn't old. Toilet paper is basically brand new. Your great-great-great-grandparents didn't have it either. Neither did their great-great-great-grandparents. Neither did basically anyone ever in the history of anything. So why didn't everyone just copy the best idea? Because nobody could call each other. Rome had sponges because Rome had oceans. Vikings had moss because Vikings had forests. Japan had sticks because Japan had bamboo. Everybody used whatever was lying around because nobody had any way of finding out what anybody else was doing. No internet, no group chat, no, hey, try moss, it's amazing, 5 stars, would recommend. Every single group on Earth had to figure this out completely on their own, from scratch, with zero help, with zero hints, with zero idea that anyone else on the planet was solving the exact same problem at the exact same time. Which is actually kind of amazing when you think about it that way. They weren't dumb. They were just alone. Millions of people, all separately having the exact same very normal, very human problem, and every single one of them had to figure it out completely from scratch. Now, you'd think being a king would fix this problem. Money fixes everything, right? Wrong. Ancient Chinese emperors were actually the first people in the world to use paper for this. Real paper. Way before anyone else. Sounds fancy, until you learn that regular people weren't allowed to use it. Paper was expensive. Paper was for emperors only. Everyone else was still out there with rocks and leaves, watching the palace like must be nice. Meanwhile, medieval kings and queens in Europe somehow worse off than the Vikings. Castles, crowns, gigantic feasts, and their bathroom situation was a bucket, some hay, and a very long walk to the nearest river if things got desperate. Turns out being royalty got you better food, better clothes, and a significantly worse toilet experience than a guy living in a hut with a big pile of leaves right outside the door. Rich people have always been strange like that. Great jewelry, terrible bathrooms. So how did we go from sponges and sticks to the soft, squishy roll sitting in your bathroom right now? Slowly, awkwardly, and more recently than you'd ever guess, the very first toilet paper made just for this job showed up in the 1800s. Less than 200 years ago. It was sold as a medical product, not a normal everyday thing. Because, get this, people were embarrassed to admit they just wanted something soft. For a while after that, people used old newspapers and store catalogs instead because paper was still expensive and those were just lying around the house already. Free is free. Rolled toilet paper on a tube didn't show up until even later than that. In the earliest versions, actual complaints on record about splinters. So somewhere out there, a company had to hold a very serious business meeting about how to make toilet paper less splintery. Grown adults, in suits, discussing wood splinters. With total seriousness, history is full of surprisingly undignified meetings, and that might be the most undignified one of all. So next time you grab a soft, squishy roll of toilet paper without even thinking about it, remember what you're actually holding. 300,000 years of humans solving the exact same problem, over and over, with whatever they could find. Sponges, moss, sticks, rocks that somebody somewhere had the incredibly unfortunate job of sanding down by hand one pottery shard at a time. With absolutely no thanks from history, they didn't have it easy. But they figured it out every single time, every single culture, with nothing but whatever was lying around and a whole lot of determination. And someday, 300 years from now, somebody is going to look at what you use and laugh exactly as hard as you just did. That's not a bad thing. That's just being human. Slow down. Think a little.